3 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame show. Jay Phillips inside the Herndon Chevy Studios. Jen Jensen, kind enough to be back.
Aren't you excited?
I am. When's the last time? I don't even know.
Well, I would say it's been too long.
I will not try. Well, no. Let me rephrase this. I will do my level-headed best to come nowhere close to being the pain in the rear end that Bill Gunner is to you.
I can promise you.
Is that fair?
Just in this 15 seconds, you have already not been as obnoxious.
Sweet. Well, see?
Hey, you actually got here on time, so that's
There's
step
a win.
one.
Check. Right there. Our good friend Mike Gillespie hanging out for a couple of hours today.
Yes. It's nice to be back.
You've been in here a lot.
I've been in here a lot. I haven't been here in quite some time. You've got video now, and
yeah, please don't hold that against us.
Oh my goodness! Like, this is a whole different setup than the one that I'm used to. We just had microphones back then.
Sure, that's true. Yeah, still the same mics now with some cameras and some other things. But yeah, it's fun. Good to have you in here. We'll talk. I'm gonna get Mike's take on this FSU ACC situation and how it expands into potential expansion of the Southeastern Conference or the Big Ten or the Big 12. I know I am in the camp. I was watching something, one of the podcasts with Barrett Sallee the other day. I know Barrett feels the way I do. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I mean, FSU and Clemson are just going to go to the SEC. Sure. It's like saying, oh, yeah, well, Kroger's out of milk, so I'll just go down to the Publix. it ain't that easy.
No.
It ain't that simple.
No. Though I would say that there are only two options at this point for them.
Yeah, so being?
Big Ten or SEC. I honestly don't think long term. Yeah. Long term. Short term, it's ACC.
I don't know. I just think, look, for one thing, I think the ACC needs to get its bleep together. Including them. And maybe we're headed there. If you didn't hear, yesterday, a judge, now apparently, from what I understand, in Florida, and I know you're from Florida, but you're not a lawyer, but from what I read this morning in the Tallahassee and Orlando papers, the judge in Leon County yesterday ordered mediation because that's basically the law of Florida.
Yes. Well, and then he said every case that I've decided has always gone to. There's always been some sort of mediation involved, right? By the way, this judge is also a Florida State graduate, which I think is kind of interesting. But whatever. He actually, to be honest, I think he's doing a really good job. I think he was pretty fair yesterday by telling Florida State, "Hey, look, you guys just don't have enough to bring to the table yet to bring an entire lawsuit against a conference, especially a $500 million lawsuit. We just need more before we proceed." So,
and he's going to allow that. He didn't have to, but he's going to. And so we'll touch on some of those things for you in a little bit. But it's interesting how it affects Clemson remains to be seen. You know, what Clemson is looking for is slightly different than what Florida State is looking for, though they both certainly want a lowering of any potential exit fee. They want to reclaim their media rights. Again, I'm not an attorney, by the way, but I did see an attorney talking about this this morning, this Florida State case, and basically saying something about how somebody gotten hold of Texas's agreement when they come into the SEC and what the expectations are. And long story short, how the grant of rights would go away if you left the conference. And everything I read, once they finally got us some of that information from the ACC, I didn't take it that way. But again, I'm not an attorney.
I don't.
The way I took it was, we have your media rights, not your media rights via Disney.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Your media rights, period.
Yes, we own the ACC owns Clemson's, Florida State's media rights. So that includes volleyball, basketball, football, all of that is owned by the ACC.
If the Disney deal, fell through in a couple of years and I'm just going to say NBC came in, then the ACC still has it because you signed it over. So it gets interesting, but we'll touch on those things. But I want Mike's perspective as a guy who grew up in Florida on some of the things I've talked about from a market standpoint as much as anything else. And I realize there's now a blend between market and brand. I do get that. I'm not naive. I know this isn't the old days. And yet I will also say, to put a fine point on this for now, that tens of millions of Americans still get their entertainment on television through a cable provider.
Sure.
And that's not going away quickly. It is.
And the reason why it's not going away, sports.
Yeah, because live sports help. And really, and honestly, there are times, now I'm going to go off on a tangent. There are times when, while I do stream all my stuff now, I don't always like it because it's like 30 to 45 seconds behind, man.
It is.
And whereas cable is about 7 or 8 seconds behind.
Yeah, I remember when I was working my old TV job, whenever I would watch something on SEC Plus, I'd always be tweeting like a minute behind David and everybody else, doing it for a living. And I always felt so behind, but it is.
And I don't like that.
No.
And I don't know enough about the technology side of it all to know why that continues to be such a thing.
You would think in 2024 that it would be pretty close.
And
like
don't all these things travel at the speed of light? Like eventually, it's how far is it really going? I get it. Maybe it has to beam somewhere and back down and across and whatever. But should it take like 5 times longer than cable?
No, not in 2024. I don't think
it shouldn't.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we got that going for you. We'll get into a few Gamecock thoughts. Of course, the spring game on Saturday night. We talked a lot about it yesterday. Our buddy Hale McGranahan of the Big Spurs is going to join us bottom of the hour, and he will have some thoughts on what we learned. I suppose is did we learn anything? Do we need to learn anything? Was there an expectation of learning anything? I think those are some of the things. I mean, from your own perspective, did you?
No.
Yeah.
But I think Dow Loggins set it up that way.
Right.
Right. And I think he was very honest before the spring game and said, hey, look, we're going to be a vanilla offense. We're not going to show much.
Well, and I joked yesterday because I did not. I was in Hilton Head, so I didn't see the spring game. I was at the Heritage. But
fantastic tournament.
It was fun. It was great.
Love that.
It was great. I saw people that were complaining about play calling at a spring game, and I didn't know how to take that. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I took it negatively, but almost like comically negative.
Because
like, come on, man. Like, come on, man.
It's like the people that last year, or was this 2 years ago, maybe, I was going back and forth with on Twitter. Well, like, for some odd reason, Jay, I have no idea why I spent so much time on Twitter with these people, but like, there were people who were upset about the spring game attendance numbers, right? And like literally USC just announced the official attendance, right? So we as reporters are like, these are the spring game attendance numbers. Right. And then everyone's like, oh my God, what? That's not true. And I'm like, I'm just reporting.
Too small, too big?
They thought there were more people.
Okay.
Yes. Not this year. I think this was last year.
Okay.
But yeah, and I'm just kind of just sitting there like, does it really, like, I mean, honestly, does this make that much of a difference? I mean, maybe it does. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't want to, like, upset anybody in the NIL world. Maybe it does. Maybe it does have a huge, significant advantage if you can get a ton more people at your spring game. I just don't know if that's really the world that I want to live in. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But we'll talk to Hale about some of those things. Got some baseball to get to with our good friend Derek Scott, the voice of the Gamecocks, will be with us at 4:30 for his regular Tuesday visit. No midweek game this week, obviously, as Carolina has final exams as the spring semester winds down this week, beginning next week.
Final exams.
If you have to take those. I don't know. I think most professors these days just have a test or turn in a paper.
Right? Yeah, that's what I did. Well, in grad school, we just had papers. That was it. Just papers. Oh,
I still sometimes have nightmares of the blue book.
Do you? Yeah. Do you ever have the nightmare
the blue book?
Where you ever forget, like, have the nightmare where you forget, or where you think that you forgot to turn in an assignment or forgot to go to class? I still have those nightmares.
Sometimes, I do have the one about not going to class. It's weird.
Oh.
Yeah, why is that?
What
does that
I have
mean?
the same thing where it's the midterm or it's like a week from the final, and it's like, you've never been to class. I don't own the book, and I'm going to graduate.
Right.
I won't.
Yeah, that somehow you would wind up in that situation. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Where all of a sudden you have a week left, and you're like, oh. I guess I need to learn a semester's worth of material now in a week.
Exactly.
Is there a psychologist / psychiatrist that looks into why that is still a thing for all of us?
They probably could make a lot of money. We could have them help them write a big book.
We should have one of those on the show. You guys do that.
Fascinating.
Do that in the morning.
Oh, it's like analyze Gunter.
Yeah. That's what I was kind of going for. Then get a super secret analysis of the morning show host.
Yeah. That'd be great.
And then we'll report back.
I love it. Okay, let's work on that.
Dude, because he's not listening right now. He's on the boat.
Oh.
He's on the boat?
I thought he was,
Probably. He's not sleeping?
I thought
he's not sleeping yet.
He's probably doing some kind of research at a bar somewhere.
He's on. Yeah. Well, I was going to give it. Well, maybe I was going to give him the benefit of the doubt and just say it's a lovely day. He's on the boat.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go with that.
Yeah. Trying to be nice.
If I had a boat, I would be on it.
I saw Mr. Gunner this morning after the morning show. We did our TV show for Gamecocks Plus. We had a lot of fun with that today.
Oh, that's good.
To talk about the football game, and we got to walk on near the field. We didn't walk on the field, but we actually had to move some furniture, and we decided to walk down the visitor sideline to do it.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, how about that?
I actually got to go on the field a couple weeks ago. I went to the Coach Beamer Ladies' Day event.
Oh, cool.
And it was really great. And I won't bore you with all the details, but there was one point at the very end where they wanted to give you the feeling of rushing out to 2001.
Yes. Oh.
And so literally they had the big fire extinguishers that are going as you're running through the, and they had the music playing. So that was fun. But yeah, we got to go out on the field, and some people who had turned 40 were on the 40-yard line taking pictures, and it was a good time.
So I like that.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's good.
Taking care of people, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, but we'll analyze Gunner one day. That's what the summer's for.
The entire summer.
When it slows down.
Yes.
Just a little bit. So we have that for you. Again, we'll get into a few things going on. The Pac-12 has news. We'll touch on that for you, too, as it relates to the business of college athletics. So a lot to get to today, the Braves, and a whole lot more, and it's draft week. We'll come back on the other side, though. I want to come back and get Mike's take on a couple of things about the spring game, get your take as well. You know what? I tell you what, before I do that, let me be a better host here. I'm going to ask you our poll question. Now, yesterday, I did this one. With the Gamecock spring game, this one's still running. Mm-hmm. With the Gamecock spring game in the rearview mirror, what is your expectation level for the 24 football season relative to where it was in January? You got three choices. More optimistic, basically the same, less optimistic. All right. And then today's poll question. So think on that one.
Okay.
All right. We'll come back with answers on the other side. So yesterday we asked if the expectations of Gamecock fans had changed after spring football practice or remained the same looking to the 24 season. Now we ask what those expectations are. 9 or more wins. That's A. B, 7 or 8 wins. C, 6 wins and any bowl. D, no bowl game. So chew on those. Those of you who would like to participate, please do. At jphillips1075 is the way to vote. I'll give you some results. We'll talk about these things, and we'll stay with spring football coming up in just a little bit when our buddy Hale McGranahan of the Big Spur joins us around 3:30. This is the Tuesday afternoon postgame show. 18 minutes after 3 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay Phillips, Mike Gillespie hanging out. Elijah Campbell has the day off. Back with us tomorrow. Jen Jensen is at Master Control. Very kind of her to come back in and say, hey.
Hey.
So there's that. Appreciate that. And, man, you didn't have to have, I know you missed Preston, but you didn't have to have Bill with you yesterday, so that was nice.
No, it was pretty nice.
Yeah.
It is. There's just a different air,
Sure.
It smells a little better in the studio. And,
now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Come on.
Here's the important stuff.
This is the real inside baseball that listeners want to hear about Bill Gunner's experiences on the morning show.
Right.
So we've thrown out a couple of poll questions, gotten a few comments. Let me repeat them real quick here for you. Again, this was yesterday is what I'll start with. The Gamecock spring game in the rearview mirror. What is your expectation level for the 24 football season relative to where it was in January? Whatever your own personal expectation level may have been. A, more optimistic. B, basically the same. C, less optimistic. 71% of you say basically the same. 17.2% more optimistic, 11.8% less optimistic. Then today I asked what those expectations are as you look ahead. 9 or more wins, A. 7 or 8 wins is B. 6 wins and any bowl, C. No bowl game, D. Right now, 49.2% say your expectation
bowl game
is 6 wins in any bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I hope I've done enough to. This is what I want your expectation to be. Your hope can be something different.
Sure.
And if you're basing that on what you believe this team is going to look like, I get it. 49.2% just make a bowl. 28.8% 7 or 8 wins. Again, expectation.
Right.
15.7%. What do you think it is? No bowl game or 9+ wins? 15.7.
No bowl game.
You're right. And
is that right?
Just 6.3% say 9 or more. And 9 or more this year is going to be a stretch, I would think, based on what we look at right now. Sure. Now, I had a guy hit me. First, our buddy Pops Frisbee hit me, and let me get into this, and Mike, and then I want your take. Pop said it's kind of sad that 20 years ago, since Lou Holtz and Steve Spurrier stepped on campus and proved it could be done here, that our expectations are still 6 wins and any bowl. A guy named Jason responded to that and said, I think this is more of a reflection of last year than overall. Ask this same question in the middle of the great Spurrier years, and it would be 9 or 10+ wins.
100%.
Okay,
Yep.
I agree. Now, I responded to Jason and said, the point I often make, and I'm speaking for me now, me, Jay Phillips, the point I often make is the inability of this fan base to really settle in on what they believe to be an annual, realistic, minimum expectation coupled with the optimism any fan base has for its team. And what I mean by that is, and I'm not trying to compare South Carolina to Georgia or Ohio State or anything like that, all right? I've often said if you could get to a level where Iowa is or like a Wisconsin, you know, that might not be a bad thing for South Carolina football in taking those steps. I think it's going to be really difficult for South Carolina football to ever be considered Georgia or Ohio State. There are far too many factors working against you, and you would need to do a lot of winning of championships. I digress. My point on this is, and I told Terry this yesterday, Mike. I've said 8 for a while.
Yeah.
Go in expecting 8.
8 wins?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not 8-0 in the conference.
Yep.
8 wins. Mm-hmm. All right. Maybe 5-3 with 3 non-cons. Maybe you win all your non-cons. I don't know.
Sure.
But go in expecting 8. That's your floor.
Yeah.
Okay. Some years you may not hit it for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. Like last year, again, 53 first or second year players. You were asking a lot of young players, and then they had to play more than even the coaching staff thought they would, considering the makeup of the roster. Some years you may go above that if you have a senior-laden team or a veteran-laden team or anything like that. But you've got to set some type of permanent bar, right?
Sure.
That's what I think. And I haggle, as somebody who's been around here my whole life, I haggle people sometimes over 7 or 8. Like, well, 8's too much. Is it? Again, there was a 5-year stretch, not all that long ago, where you won 49 games in 5 years.
Yeah. With one of the greatest college football coaches ever.
Yeah. And, I mean, it can be done. I don't know that it always needs – now, Steve Spurrier had tons to do with that.
Well, and local talent.
Yes.
Remember, and he even says a large part of why they won was because there was just this influx of incredible talent in South Carolina that all came at the same time.
And that was not something that this state can replicate on a regular basis, but you got to go get those guys, and you got to recruit Charlotte, and everybody recruits Atlanta and all that. I get all that. But what gets me is, I don't know, 6?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, 7?
Sure.
It's like at some point, whether it's setting the bar as a minimum expectation for the coach, for the team, for the fans, whatever, that's hard, so it just seems to fluctuate a little more than I would like. But not to say I'm just in here like some, overlord of this.
Sure.
But I mean, I don't think 8 is an unrealistic annual expectation considering they spend what they spend, considering the passion of this fan base, and that you have shown that you can do it with some level of consistency.
I'm going to meet you in the middle here, and I'm going to say 7. I think 7 is I think that's a good bar to try to hit every year, especially with, some of the non-conference teams. You have to remember a big part of, these expectations, I'm sure, has to do with, okay, this year you got to play Oklahoma and you got to play Alabama.
Back to back at their place.
And I know that Alabama doesn't have Nick Saban anymore, but Alabama's still going to be Alabama. It still has the national brand. It still pulls in more money than anybody else, right? So for me,
well, their new coach played for a national title last year. Their old coach didn't. So there's.
You know what? And that's a good point. Have you seen some of the things that they've been doing in practice though? That's. I mean, I don't know. Like I love the choreography that they're doing. By the way,
sure,
it's very, very. Sure. It's lovely.
Sure.
But there might be a little bit of a different attitude there now. But, I think a lot of that has to do with the conference realignment and expansion and what have you. But I think that 7 wins every year is a reasonable expectation for South Carolina football, given the passionate fan base, the amount that they put into it. Yes. The stability that I think that they have in the athletics department there. Shane Beamer as a head coach. I think that's a reasonable expectation. 6 seems to be a little low. It seems like you're almost settling for mediocrity.
And that's what I'm saying. And that's why 6, 7, 8, if it's in that range. But 6, I go back to the 90s when Dr. McGee was here, and may he rest in peace. Just get that fan base to a bowl game. They don't care. And 30 years ago, that may have been something that was more realistic for this fan base because there were still, believe it or not, kids, not as many bowls to go to.
Yeah.
I just don't think settling, and I'm not saying that anybody's settling or that this is an annual expectation. If you want to reset your annual, that's probably okay. Sure. I'm still looking for a standard, and then we mix in, like for instance, okay, again, I mentioned earlier, Georgia, Ohio State. What does Ohio State expect to do every year? Win the national title. Mm-hmm. Winning the Big Ten is a step along the way. Mm-hmm. Georgia now expects to win the national title. Right. But you know who else does in the Southeastern Conference? Alabama.
Sure.
You know who else does in the Southeastern Conference?
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
For
LSU.
some odd reason.
Yeah, Tennessee may have pulled back a touch, right?
I don't know.
Some of them haven't because they're still living, 25 years ago.
They are. I mean, no, seriously. But to their credit, man, Tennessee as an athletics department, in my opinion, is miles ahead of most. They have had consistent success across the board in so many different sports, including football.
And I think they're getting to a point now where if they can win the SEC again, then they are going to reset back to where they were in the heyday of Philip Fulmer. But you've got, in my opinion, right now, I'm not sure where Texas is yet, but you've got 4 fan bases with Oklahoma coming in.
Yeah.
That annually in this conference expect to win the national championship.
Yep.
Anything short may not be deemed failure. It will be disappointment.
Yeah, 100%.
Auburn is close. Tennessee is close.
Yep.
Florida has fallen on hard times, but there was certainly a point, and I think it's more realistic, honestly, for UF fans to be disappointed than Tennessee fans because UF has the titles, plural, and has the talent and has everything else.
And they've done it. They did it in the 2000s. They only did it 20 years ago instead of 30.
But for Carolina fans, I don't know, 7, 8.
You know what's crazy, too, not to get on a tangent about, about Florida and all of that, but, when you talk about the University of Florida and how their expectations have kind of changed a little bit. Yeah. But, it's funny when you go back and you look at the SEC East titles, right, over the last 12 years, it's almost split between Florida and Georgia.
Yeah, Florida's got a few, which
crazy.
Is
but again, to your point, their expectations have fallen.
And they don't need to. Hale McGranahan on the other side. We'll get his take on spring football, what he learned, what we need to maybe glean from some of the little behind-the-scenes things. Hale joins us from the Big Spur as the postgame show continues. Love telling you about our good friend, Dr. Dan Balknight, and his entire team at the men's clinic out in Irmo. Listen, guys, as we get older, we're not functioning the same as we used to in a number of facets of life. And you may say, I'll be fine. I'm not going to worry about it. It'll fix itself. Yeah, probably not. Okay, probably not. Here's the good news. Dr. Dan Balknight will get to know you. Listen, there are doctors out there. Hey, what's your name? Hey, what do you do? All right, here, take this. Write your prescription. Dan doesn't do that. Dan's going to get to know you, ask about everything you do in your life, things that are going on in your life, and how, with his team and with some comprehensive lab work and some other measures, they can get to the root of the issue and make you feel like you want to feel. Get a free consultation when you call 803-875-MENS. Start feeling the way you want to feel with Dr. Dan Balknight and the Men's Clinic. Talking some Gamecock football on this Tuesday. Welcome back into the post-game show. Mike Gillespie hanging out with yours truly, Jay Phillips. Elijah Campbell has the afternoon off. And the wonderful Jen Jensen is hanging out with us and making sure that I'm on my best behavior.
I'm kind of strict, I know.
Yeah, I feel that way. I do feel, Jen just handed me some things to do later on. Right here,
a little housekeeping. Yeah, that's kind of the thing I guess I have in the morning. So.
And I kind of said, yeah, I may get to it. And then she was like, in so many words, like, no, you will. You will
like, okay.
get to it.
Not me, man.
We will also get to our good friend Hale McGranahan on the beat covering Gamecock football and more for the Big Spur. Always appreciate his time. Happy spring football being over, sir. How are you?
Doing great. Happy to hear those words. Spring football being over.
on to bigger and better for a little while at least. A two-parter here. What did we, and that is the collective sports community around the Gamecock football, learn? And then B, what did Hale McGranahan most learn about Carolina football this spring?
Ooh, I don't know if I could speak for everyone else. And honestly, I don't know if I could say a whole lot that I learned, really. I mean, there's still question marks on this team, quite frankly. I mean, you're going to be looking at a first-year starting quarterback. They've got some work to do at filling out that receiver core. The defense has a lot of new pieces and some veteran pieces, so maybe the outlook might be a little bit better on that side of the ball. So I guess if I had to really answer your question from my perspective, Jay, I guess I would say I think this defense is going to be really good. I don't know how good, but I think it's going to be as good as we've seen around here in at least 5, 6, 7 years since that 2017 team on year 200 Muschamp. So that's kind of my answer, I think.
Yeah, okay. And with that opinion, do you look at it more of sort of the mantra I always carry around, Hale, which is more good players? Is it a level of experience? I'm sure it's probably some kind of blend.
I think you nail it, Jay. I mean, they've got more good players up front in that front six, whether it's at defensive end with the guys they got from the transfer portal or Dylan Stewart, who they signed out of high school, and the tackle with DeAndre Jules, and the linebackers they brought in, high school and the portal as well. It's deep, it's talented, and they do have some pretty good players coming back as well. So I think it's a nice blend of youth and new guys who aren't young and guys who have been around and are pretty old and played a ton here. So I think there's a lot to like about that group, and for me, I'm just kind of curious to see really how good they can be.
Hale, I'm an ex-TV guy, so I got to ask you the obvious question, which is about the quarterbacks. But what do you see from Lenoris Sellers that you really like? And then, obviously, what are some of those issues that he's got to work on between now and August?
Yeah, Mike, I like that he's just kind of a cool, calm, collected guy. He's pretty laid back, doesn't seem to get too high or too low when he's out there on the field. Obviously, it hasn't been extended time since he's been at South Carolina, but thinking back to his high school days, I mean, he was just a smooth operator and didn't really seem to get rattled too much. And I think aside from the obvious physical gifts with the big arm and the speed and prototypical size as a quarterback, he's just pretty easy going. And I really like that in the quarterback. There's nothing wrong with having a guy who gets fired up, but I like seeing the quarterback's eyes during a big moment, and it looks like he's half awake because he's just not really bothered by it. And we haven't seen Lenoris in one of those situations yet at Carolina, but I think that he's going to handle it pretty well when he does.
Talking to Hale McGranahan of the Big Spur, recapping Gamecock spring football here in 2024. Staying with the quarterback situation, Shane did not want to tell us that Lenoris was the number one quarterback in his spring game post-game comments. But Lenoris was the offensive player of the spring. So I ask you now, in your opinion, how much separation do you believe there is between Lenoris and Robbie Ashford, Dante Reno et al.?
I don't know if I could quantify it, but I think it's probably relatively significant, pretty sizable. I mean, he came in as the starter, and by all accounts, whether it's Shane Beamer or Dow Loggins or stuff that we've heard behind the scenes, he did everything he was supposed to. They say he got better. So if you come in and you're already the guy and you're getting better all 15 practices along the way, obviously the other guys can improve too. But I would think that Lenore's probably didn't lose any ground, or I can't imagine anyone gained any ground on him at the very least.
Hale, obviously Spencer Rattler and Lenore Sellers are two very different quarterbacks here. How much does the offense change from last year to this year? Is it a lot more pro style, maybe running the ball a lot more effectively? What do you think?
Yeah, I certainly think that there's going to be more of a running threat with this offense, and that's going to look a lot different. Not to try to get into X's and O's because I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to that stuff or anything for that matter, but I think we're going to see an offense that's a little more ground-oriented, and Lenore's being the dual threat that he can be, which using his legs is kind of what you need to have to be able to do if you're going to have that dual threat label. I think he's going to be running the ball. Obviously, Rocket Sanders is going to be involved, and a handful of those other running backs. I mean, they're much better at the running back position this season compared to where they were last year, for sure. And if the offensive line can stay healthy and keep getting better, that would only, in my mind, make that potentially more effective. So how exactly it looks from a play calling standpoint and all that, I don't know. But I do think we're going to see a team that's going to try to run the ball a lot. And I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the defense being really good. If you can play complementary football that way, run the ball and play good defense, more often than not, you're going to have a good chance to win a lot of games.
Hale, I know you follow some recruiting as well, and we're hearing that this staff would like to go find that so-called jump ball wide receiver, that guy who's 6'2", 6'3", maybe pushing above 200 pounds, that can bang around a little bit in that type of situation. But the portal only has a few days left in it, and you can't grab anybody from another SEC school. How close might they be to landing that type of player right now?
I'm not sure how close they are right now. I haven't heard of any that are visiting. That doesn't mean that's not happening or hadn't already happened yet, but I haven't picked up on any definites that way. So I don't think they're that close, but with this portal stuff, you never know. Something can happen, and it's a totally different outlook within a day. So to your point, I definitely believe that they're trying to address that need and that specific type of player because they definitely need it. It's a receiver group that is not the biggest, and they certainly need somebody who can add that dimension.
Last thing for you coming out of this, do you feel like this team is going to fly under the radar this summer? There will be very little placed upon their shoulders in terms of winning expectation. Good, bad, indifferent for the program right now?
I think it's a good thing. I mean, this time a year ago, the expectations were pretty high, and in some cases extremely high. But I think it's probably an okay thing that they're flying under the radar a little bit. I mean, they're still, again, going to have a first-year starter at quarterback, whether it's Lenore Sellers or somebody else. So those are the teams that typically get overlooked during that time of year. And when you're playing in the SEC and have Clemson on the schedule every year, I think most folks on the outside who don't follow South Carolina as closely as we all do might just kind of look at them and not think a whole lot of what they got going on because there's no Spencer Rattler. They're going to see him get drafted pretty high. They're going to see Xavier get drafted pretty high. They're going to remember that the defense had some troubles last year. So, expectations might be low, but I don't think that's a bad thing when you're coming off the type of season they just had.
Good stuff as always, man. We appreciate you. We'll check in soon.
All right. Appreciate y'all.
You bet. That is Hale McGranahan. Catch his work all the time at thebigspur.com and very simply follow him at Hale McGranahan on Twitter. It's that easy.
That easy. Yeah.
Speaking of expectations, we'll update the poll questions for you as the postgame show continues. Welcome back into the postgame show on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Mike Gillespie hanging out instead. Well, I guess it's sort of Elijah's now becomes so integral to what I do around here, or attempt to do around here. But then Jen's here, and, she's
Does it make it a
really
little bit better,
charge.
maybe?
Yeah. But Mike is here to do one side of things, and you're here to do the other side of things.
Yeah. We're a
I'm
nice
very appreciative of this. Yeah.
That's right. We're lifting him up.
Yeah.
We're a nice tripod.
I appreciate it. I need all the support I can get.
Yes.
Especially as I get older. Oh, my arm, it's broken. So, I love just throwing out a little bit of Rodney Dangerfield from time to time.
Can't hurt.
But Elijah has his pops in town for a couple of days.
That's so fun.
Enjoying the Midlands and hanging out. I think they went to the spring game the other day. I think they're doing a few other things around here right now. So
That's
it's good.
awesome.
It's good.
Yeah.
Is he a Georgia guy, too?
He is from Tennessee. He grew up in central Tennessee, went to Middle Tennessee State.
Oh, okay.
And then he worked.
Elijah did? Or
Elijah did.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Tyler
went to Georgia.
Is from Georgia.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we still like him.
Yeah. Well, now that I have a daughter at UGA.
Yeah, it's funny how that changes.
It was weird. Man, I tell you.
It's a tough school to get into.
It is. We're very proud of her. She's doing well.
She got her brains from her mom, probably.
Oh, hey, man,
I think Jay would say that.
Ain't no probably.
Yeah.
Ain't no. At least, if not the brains, maybe Sonny and I share to some degree. Academic work ethic.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely comes from their,
it is funny
their mother.
There can be that difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to have the teachers or the guidance counselor, you test really well. If you would just apply yourself. I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yep.
I just don't want to.
Right. So I was like, that's cool, yeah.
And kids, just so you know, you hear what Jay is saying about how his academic work ethic is, and look where he is now.
That's right.
So
what I try to say, I go even farther back to the third and fourth grade report cards. They're like, Jay is a very good student and good in class, but he talks too much.
Yeah, I got the same thing.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Look at me now.
For sure.
Yeah.
If those teachers could see us now.
Look at me now.
Like,
yeah.
Great.
Only job that pays more to talk would be if I was like a courtroom attorney.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
They probably would pay a lot more.
Yeah, it would. It would. But that required more school.
Yes.
And this is just more fun.
Sure.
My wife and I are the same way. She works for Northwestern Mutual, and she is so much smarter than I am. Like, so much. Like, she's taking her certified financial planning exam.
Oh, really?
This summer, right? And she's doing, like, tax law and stuff right now. Yeah. And, like, I couldn't even get through 3 sentences. I'm like, I don't know what these first 3 sentences said. And that's just the first 3. And there's a whole book. I could never do this. And she's just, like, going through it like nothing. I'm like, this is insane.
That's good.
It's a different brain.
I'm glad somebody can. Yeah, I'm glad somebody can.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm not glad it's my wife.
I'm good with maps.
Yeah.
Maps?
Yeah, I can tell you where things are on a map.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Oh, I thought you said naps.
No, maps. No, I'm good with naps,
I'm good
too.
with naps.
Yes. But maps, I can point to things. Oh, yeah, I know where that is.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Keep the numbers out of
I don't like
equations
numbers.
for me.
Numbers scare me. I can do batting average.
Oh, there you go.
I can do batting average. And other related baseball percentages.
Those are important calculations.
Thank you.
And there are way too many of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Way too many baseball percentages these days.
I like that's why I like OPS now. I don't have to figure out the on-base percentage or the slugging percentage. I do know how to do both, but I won't. I can just add those 2 numbers together.
Right.
Isn't that nice?
That's great.
But it's like wins above replacement.
Oh, I don't even wanna,
goodness.
I don't
who cares?
Yeah, these algorithms, I can't deal with the algorithms.
Baseball.
Well, speaking of numbers, we have a couple of poll questions out there for you. The one from yesterday with the Gamecock spring game in the rearview mirror. What is your expectation level for the 24 football season relative to where it was in January? A, more optimistic. B, basically the same. C, less optimistic. 71.1. Hang on, let me refresh this real quick because this is from an older one here. That is new ones. My bad. 71.1%. Basically the same. 17.3 more optimistic. 11.7 less optimistic. And so what I've done is followed that up today with asking you what those expectation levels are. A, 9 or more wins. B, 7 or 8 wins. C, 6 wins and any bowl game. D, no bowl game. Basically half of you right now say your expectation for the season, 50.5%, 6 wins and any bowl. Second place, 7 or 8 wins at 28.6. 15.2 say no bowl game. 5.7, 9 or more wins.
Is that not fair, though, after the last 2 seasons? A new quarterback?
I mean,
not 2, but the reason why I say 2 is because it was
fair.
so,
six wins, and is that fair?
But it was so inconsistent. That's what I mean. Like, so 2 years ago, you almost win the Gator Bowl, right? And then last year it was the wheels came off.
They did, and that offensive line, plus, I keep saying too, if I could have even just one play back and what it might have done to change the season, that fluky bounce thing off the guy at Florida into the dude's hands,
100%.
and he strolls into the end zone. I'm like, come on, man, you can't draw that.
And the fact that they converted how many fourth downs on that drive, 3 or 4,
so
insane.
There's that one, but I mean, it probably is to some degree. It is. We'll get into some more from Coach Beamer and some of the players recapping the spring game, but want to get into this ACC versus FSU situation. New information coming at you on the postgame show. Integrated Media, one of our favorite companies to talk about here. In fact, I was just telling my friend Mike Gillespie that not only does Integrated Media do amazing home theater installation, home security installation, but they've got the brand new it's not brand new anymore. It's 9 months old. Pro Swing out on Snapdragon Court in Chapin. And I'm telling you, if you like to play golf quickly in the air conditioning on more than 200 courses, get into Pro Swing, see what they've got for you with the Golf Zone Simulator. It is absolutely fantastic. The only problem I have is that it is so far away from my house because I live in downtown Columbia. But if they had one closer, I'd be there all the time. They would hate me. So whether it's Pro Swing out in Chapin, whether it is home theater installation anywhere across, most of South Carolina, 803-948-8327. See why Integrated Media is awesome. 4 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back in. It's the second hour of the postgame show coming at you from the Herndon Chevy Studios in downtown Columbia. Jay Phillips here. Mike Gillespie alongside. Good to have Mike hanging out with us. And the incomparable Jen Jensen at Master Control today as Elijah Campbell enjoys a couple of days off.
Wait, I didn't get an adjective.
With his dad in town. The fantastic.
Thank you. Yes.
Very multi-talented.
Yeah. Yes. Oh,
okay.
Thank you very
There you
much. Yeah. Tell that to my previous employer. Just kidding.
I wasn't going there. No, we're not. No, we're not.
No.
We're not going to do. Not going to do that. But Elijah, his dad has come down from Tennessee to say, "Hey, hang out." They went.
See what he's really doing.
Yeah. I think they went to the spring game and to a Carolina baseball game, and I was thinking maybe they were on Gunner's boat, but then I realized that Gunner doesn't invite people onto his boat.
Because I don't know that he can really drive it that well.
Is it? Oh, is it just him?
It's a big boat.
Just
it's a nice boat.
A big boat.
He sent me a picture. He got it all cleaned up the other day. And it's looking good.
I thought he said something about getting a bunch of the dings, filled in or whatever. So I have no idea. I'm just making up stories that he doesn't know how to drive his boat.
On the boat or somewhere else?
That's about
all around.
That's about as much as I know about boats too. And I grew up in South Florida, so that's even more embarrassing.
Oh yeah.
Like like when you grow up down there, you're just like you're supposed to be able to talk boat lingo, and I just nah. I was like, no, I don't even know what kind of boat my dad has. Is it a Pursuit or something? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Don't know the horsepower.
It's got two engines, and it's a white boat. Is what
it's a big white pretty thing with wheels. It looks like a big
Tylenol. By the way, what was it yesterday? I got to go find it, Jen. You mentioned airplane. What was the one? Oh, the Golf Channel yesterday. All right, NBC Sports, the Golf Channel of Scotty Scheffler. Green jacket one week, tartan the next. The Masters champ Scotty Scheffler has gone to plaid, and it's a nod to Spaceballs when they anybody who's seen Spaceballs. And you've seen Star Wars, when they go to Lightspeed in Star Wars, they have you can tell they go to those lines, right?
Yeah.
Well, when they got going so fast in Spaceballs, they went to plaid.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how old the person is that did the Golf Channel tweet there,
but
they're old enough to remember Spaceballs from the 80s. So
or appreciate it now, even if they're not
for sure.
Remembering it from then.
Absolutely, yeah. Mel Brooks still applies today. That was Mel Brooks, right?
Yeah,
of course, yeah,
absolutely. No, it was that's such a good movie.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, that's a classic. I actually got kind of excited and tweeted out the other night that Wayne's World was on, and I was just like, I mean, that's not a classic, but it's just stupid funny.
It is, though.
But in its own way, it's I mean, who else has
it's a
licorice
classic.
dispenser in their gremlin?
Absolutely.
I mean,
you know what? I mean, I do like both Wayne's World movies, and that was for sequels. That was a solid story for their sequel. I liked it. But what I want is more Austin Powers because
I do too.
Austin Powers hit another level for me.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think all three of them are great. Honestly, I like certainly one. I rank them 1, 3, 2. The time travel in 2, after a while I'm like, all right, this is getting a little too much.
Yeah.
Even though time travel is a big part of the whole Austin Powers shtick, I get it. But
they did it a little too much, though.
Yeah, it was the time travel relative to just being frozen in time, which is different.
So, yes.
But there was talk, apparently, of an Austin Powers 4.
I know.
But the thing is, Mike Myers doesn't do anything anymore.
No,
I mean,
he doesn't.
He's hardly done anything. Yeah. And I know he made gobs of money from those movies, from both Wayne's World.
But doesn't he owe it to us?
Yeah, I think so. Specifically, the three of us.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I'll see if I can call
but I do. I think Wayne's World movie, both of them are really funny. And I want my kids to see them. They've watched Austin Powers with me, and they think it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
No.
I have an Austin Powers movie. We have a family game room area. And I have an Austin Powers movie poster on there. They're like, Dad, really? And I was like, hey,
love that.
Man, this is great.
Okay, see, I'd hang.
Yeah.
That's very
Oh my
cool.
God, absolutely.
It's great. And I have a James Bond. It's right next to it, so it's like
nice
because they work.
Well,
of course,
together.
Absolutely.
They work together.
So that little time travel thing, the swirly thing,
right?
so
where they just jump.
Yes. So when the portal first became a thing, when the transfer portal. I immediately thought of that. Just like Austin Powers jumping into that. So whenever a player would enter the transfer portal, it's like
you need to start creating those visual. Now that you got a little spare time,
now Dr. Pepper actually has that in their commercials. They have the transfer portal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, which we all thought of in some way.
Yeah,
is that what it was? All right, so I've get into a couple other things. We'll come back around to the poll questions we've asked y'all, but I want to get you updated on something that's going on with this ACC FSU situation, and again, to some degree, Clemson is going to be involved. But yesterday, we didn't have time to get to this yesterday. It happened yesterday afternoon, though. But a judge in Tallahassee, Judge John Cooper. Okay, if you read the AP report, which I'm reading from right now, he says Judge Cooper technically approved the ACC's motion to dismiss on Monday. Now that you may read that and say, "Oh, so a win for the ACC." Kinda, but not really. And here's why. He told Florida State, "Listen, y'all aren't making the case that you think you're making when it comes to jurisdiction. You haven't told me, based on what the evidence currently shows, that you have the right to have this heard in Florida."
In Florida, right? Where they believe, obviously,
that it should,
could
because
get
like we're in Florida, and they want a better. They think a fairer. I don't know. Yeah, fair is way too subjective here. And I did read one legal analysis that basically said the way Florida State had worded their initial situation was because they thought, rightly, I think, that it would go to federal court. Because there were going to be multi-state, jurisdictions, blah, 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 and it'll ultimately just go to federal court.
Sure.
And it may still.
It could, but, I mean, that's a long way away at this point because they still have to go to mediation.
Yeah. And so I'll just read verbatim here. The judge gave FSU 7 days to amend its complaint because the university needs more specificity regarding key facts in a case he said is worth up to $500 million. The conference would have 20 days to respond afterward, and another hearing would be set. The judge said, quote, "The case is not over. The case will continue." He ordered the two sides to begin mediation within 120 days, but since a mediator can't force an agreement, it may well go back to court. And this all centers around, as most of you know now, Florida State and Clemson have not specifically said, "We want out."
And that's a big part of this case as well.
Right. If anything else, what they have said is, okay, quietly, more behind the scenes, we want more money.
Sure.
And if we can't get more money, then we want out. But we want out at a much lower number than what is currently out there. And again, the exit fee would be something like $140 million, plus they forfeit the rights to the television contract, which is why this case could be worth up to
$575 million. I think.
So, again, I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend like I'm a lawyer and I know what's going to happen next or anything like that. I don't know what mediation is going to do here, though.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to do anything.
I don't either.
Because you have they're at an impasse already. And the impasse is over the contract which Florida State signed.
Right.
To be in the ACC, what they're trying to say, Jay, too, and this is an interesting part of their argument, they're trying to say that their exit fee also shouldn't count because they voted against it.
And honestly, I did not realize that until yesterday.
It makes sense, but then you're like, yeah, but that's not the way conferences work.
No, it's not. And that's,
What you have a collective here, you have a group of teams, of schools who make the decision for the conference.
Right.
And you take a vote, and that's the law of the land at that point. And you signed the contract. But, again, it's kind of an interesting argument that they say, I think in 2012, when they took the initial vote on the exit fee, they were one of the few that didn't want to raise the exit fee.
They and Maryland.
Maryland, yeah. So, I mean...
And guess what Maryland did?
They left. Yep. Well, and you know what? Florida State had their chances, too.
Yeah.
Like, I hate to sound like, the big Florida grad, but, like, FSU did have their chances. They could have left back in January. Now, where they would have gone, I have no idea. But, there were ways to circumvent this whole entire thing. And to me, it just doesn't seem like Florida State's got that much of a case because their only case, their only complaint is basically, we want to make more money.
Yeah.
Well, you signed a contract.
Yeah, you did. And that's what I kept saying, too, is that you signed this thing.
Right.
You know, whether – and, again, I didn't realize – I don't know how much it mattered, to your point. I don't know how much it matters that Florida State was a no vote if it was still ratified.
Sure.
I mean, that's like saying if I'm in Congress, well, I voted no on that bill. Okay, well, everybody else voted yes, and it's now the law of the land.
Right. It still went through.
I do think it's the same principle is in effect.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, again, I'm not a judge. I'm not an attorney. I don't know how much that might have any bearing on this, but I agree with you in principle at that point. But now, it comes around, to the larger point that I want to ask you about, because you and I haven't talked about this. And that's the landing spots. Mm-hmm. Because, as I mentioned to you earlier, on air, off air, and we've talked about it on the show a bunch, there's this feeling from whether it's FSU fans, Clemson fans, just people in general around the country, oh, well, I mean, Florida State and Clemson are just going to just go to the SEC. Well, I don't think so.
No, not necessarily. Well, and I'm going to bring in a totally different part of this, which is the TV background, because I spent so many years working in TV sports, and I know that landscape really, really well because I've got a ton of friends in who work for ESPN. But there's a big underrated part of this whole entire argument, and it is the networks. It is Fox and it's ESPN.
Yeah.
Guess what Fox doesn't want to happen? They don't want Clemson and Florida State to go to the SEC because, again, who has the contract with the SEC?
Disney.
ESPN, ABC, Disney, right? So they're going to do their best, and ESPN's going to do their best, right, to not have Clemson and Florida State go to the Big Ten, because all of a sudden, right, that raises the level of the Big Ten. They can get more money, right? And it might outrate at some point. It might outrate the SEC if Clemson and Florida State joined. I don't know if that's true.
And let me ask you. Let me ask you. I don't want you to necessarily hold your thought. I want you to blend your thought with what I'm going to bring up, because this is one of the things I bring up a lot. And we're going to be up against a break in a second, so we can continue this conversation. But there again, even if it's the Big Ten, we've seen the Big Ten through its history invite people that it believes fit in the Big Ten.
Sure.
For multiple reasons. Not just television sports over the next decade or so.
Academics.
Yeah. And I'm not saying Clemson and FSU are bad schools, because they're not. They rate fine. Right. But they don't have the same level of status that the other schools of the Big Ten have.
You're right.
There's only one that's not a member of the American Association of Universities, and that's Nebraska.
Right.
And when Nebraska joined the Big Ten, they were a member.
Yeah.
Every other school is.
That's a great point.
And even whether it's the SEC or the Big Ten, it's like, oh, then they'll go to the Big Ten. Will they? I'm not saying they can't.
Sure.
But let's not. I have a hard time, Mike, just saying that we're only looking at this through the prism of televised sports. And I understand I'm not naive.
Sure.
But I also know that these people have been doing things their way for a long time, and it works quite well for them. And they have a method to their so-called madness.
Well, and who are the people making these contracts? The presidents, right? And the presidents are on the academic side of things, not the athletic
and
side.
They all report to their boards who like things done their way. You know, I mean, you're right. The presidents make the decisions, yes. Yeah. But they got some people to report to if it goes south.
Sure.
And then they might be out of a job if it goes south, or if they don't like what they did, or anything like that. And I don't know. You and I may or may not agree. And I'm not alone in what I'm going to say on the other side of the break about where they could go. But I will say, as I go into this for the next part of the conversation, I mentioned this earlier, the ACC needs to get their bleep together. And they need to do it quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. But I also, as I've said before, too, don't think it's just about Clemson and Florida State. I think there's some bigger prizes, or at least as big a prizes, in that conference if this thing goes south. 803-404-6100. If you want to be a part of it, we'll get that for you on the other side, more on this particular story and what happens next for Florida State, how it could impact Clemson as the postgame show continues.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Welcome back in. Postgame show continues here on this Tuesday afternoon. Do want to remind you to go to 1075thegame.com, register for the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Every game, they add $25 to the pot. It's a really big, nice pot.
And what is it up to?
It's a good question, Jen. It's $1,000.
I love it.
So, and as Elijah and I have been telling people, it's all in nickels. That's why it's a very big pot.
I think that would actually be super fun.
Well, we said that'd be awesome to carry a pot of $1,000 in nickels to, your Kroger, your Publix, and go to that coin thing.
At my previous station, we actually did when it was show 2K, so it was 2000. It was right around the year 2000 and all that. And the morning show we did, you won literally 2,000 pennies. So it was fantastic. We had the bags of pennies. It was great.
That's awesome.
I'm sure the winner loved it.
I'm sure, yeah.
The thing is, that coin machine deal,
yeah,
they take like 12% or something.
Yeah. Just did it the other day. The one at Publix. Yeah,
was it 12?
It was like, I think it was 10 or 12 or something like that, yeah.
I hate that, but I've got a lot of change I need to get back.
Well, my daughter wanted to go. One of my daughters had, like the piggy bank, and that was nice. And here's the thing about piggy banks, by the way. It is a great tool for teaching your children how to save money.
Yeah.
But it's actually kind of bad because there's zero interest earned.
That is true.
Do I need to So I felt like I should have given her another $5.
Right.
My wife would be very proud of you, Jay.
That's
the first thing she always keep it in a Charles Schwab or whatever it is. Like
even if it's in
that thing.
Even if it's in like a bank CD or something.
Yeah, they do. Sure. My daughter actually does with another company. They're called buckets. And so you put money in different buckets. So like when she was getting ready to get her dog, she had the dog bucket.
Oh, that's cool.
And she has like, the insurance bucket and it's like, okay, well, that's a good concept too.
Yeah.
It helps you distribute and see what you're saving for each thing. So
absolutely.
That was
cool. But interest is good. Like my savings account, I get like 3 cents a month.
Right.
Interest.
Yes.
Like thanks.
And then at the end of the year, you do need to claim that. So make sure
I know,
you
right?
do.
It's 36 cents in income.
Yeah. That's
it's
not an above the line.
Thanks, Uncle Sam. But if a Gamecock hitter hits a grand slam home run, you win all the cash in that pot. And again, right now it is at $1,000. So go to 1075thegame.com and register.
It's not 1 million bajillion,
no.
$100 billion.
But and that, just so I don't get in trouble later. Anybody think it's not actually payable in nickels?
Now, maybe if they ask for it, maybe.
I mean, if you probably could, yeah. If you wanted it, y'all remember
that?
You might. I don't know, Mike. You might not. We were talking Wayne's World and stuff earlier. Jen, you'll remember there was a funny commercial. SNL does their great commercials.
Oh yeah.
And it was a bank that did nothing but make change. Remember that?
I forgot
and it's
about
like,
that.
It's like if you have a 5, you can go in and ask for a 1 and 2 2s. You can ask for and like he had like the combination of like how many dimes and nickels and stuff. But
that was a great bit.
It's like all we do is make change.
Yeah, that's.
Did you see the Beavis and Butthead one that they did last week? That was pretty funny.
Heidi Gardner.
It was pretty funny. It was very stupid humor, but that's
it was incredible. Well, it was supposed to be,
Ryan.
but she she had not seen Mikey Day in his getup until, and then she like that's a classic. That's what I love about live comedy.
Yes.
Like, that's why I love SNL is so good is when they do actually break character.
Yeah.
But Heidi Gardner, who's great, I mean she lost
totally broke.
She lost it.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
That's what makes it more fun.
Go see it. Just y'all can anywhere you find your clips. Go to YouTube.
Okay.
That's why Jimmy Fallon was great on SNL.
Because you just enjoy laughing with him.
Jimmy Fallon and Will Ferrell.
Well, the Debbie Downer one, one of the original one, the one that at Disney World. Fallon and Horatio Sands can't breathe.
Yeah, that's right.
Like they can't. You can tell they just can't breathe. They're laughing so hard. Which I love that kind of stuff.
I actually saw the there was somebody replayed on the online an old SNL bit, and I mean we're talking Mike Myers was in it and Jimmy Fallon and just a whole host of classics, successful people. But it was the Partridge Family going up against the Brady Bunch, and so they were playing all of the characters. I'll have to find the link and send it because it was priceless. I had totally forgotten about that bit and wow. Mm-hmm.
That's good stuff.
That was good stuff.
All right, so we've gotten into a little bit more of the latest on the FSU versus the ACC situation. Again, yesterday, a judge in Tallahassee kind of siding with the ACC, but basically saying, hey, FSU, you need to amend your complaint. Then the conference will get to respond. And then he ordered him to go to mediation within 120 days and try to figure this thing out. Mike and I agree. I don't know if mediation's going to – they're going to go, but I just don't see how they're going to meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And then again – FSU hasn't even asked to leave yet. Okay. So what are you mediating?
So that's a big part of this whole. I don't even know what a case. I guess you'd call it a case at this point. But I mean, it's going to be an amended version. The one that we get in a month. But that's one of the larger parts. Is the ACC is saying, guys, you haven't even formally told us that you're leaving the conference. You haven't even notified us that you're looking around. So what are we even talking about? And it's true. Like if you don't officially back out of that deal, then what's there to
negotiate? I think they have to do it by
Well, didn't they have to do it by January or something?
I don't know. There's a next deadline they could do, but again, where are you going? And that's the thing too. Like I say, does FSU know something the rest of us don't in terms of where they're going to go? And like I say, I've made my point very clear for my own opinion, and it's based on conversations I have had with people that do this for a living, either at the conference level or those around the conference. The SEC, from what I've been told, is not interested in adding Clemson and Florida State. The SEC is really not interested in expanding at this point. But if they were to expand, while they do want geography to be part of it and contiguous states and things like that, again, potentially schools in North Carolina or Virginia would be more attractive. And Texas is different in terms of Texas A&M because it's Texas.
Right.
And with all due respect to Clemson and Florida State, they're not the University of Texas.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that.
Right.
But
well, academically and ethically.
just everything.
Yeah.
It's just,
for sure.
it's just the University of Texas. You added a premier institution. I honestly think that the Big 12 could work something out, and that the members of the Big 12 might be willing to give Clemson and Florida State a little something more should they decide they're leaving. I think if the Big Ten, I don't know, in my opinion, if the Big Ten were going to add a school in Florida, they can't add Florida, so they'd add Miami before Florida State.
Right.
I think that both conferences,
based off of
the market, the academics,
right?
Miami is again. Clemson and Florida State are fine schools. Right. I'm not knocking. Sure. I've knocked Louisville before.
Sure.
All right.
Right.
Sorry, but I have. I would not put Clemson or Florida State in Louisville's category.
Right.
I would not. Yeah. I'll leave it at that, and you can go look it up if y'all want to. Miami, though, I would put in the more like academically, like the Duke category, the Vanderbilt category, the Rice category. It's an excellent school, and it's in a very big city. And they've got alums all up and down the Eastern Seaboard and whatnot. They don't really have a lot of big fan base down in Miami. They got a base, but it's not like UF or
students
FSU.
Also aren't from Florida.
Right. That's what I say. It's a lot like Duke and stuff. Yeah, it's like Duke. I mean, they're just, they come down, they go south, they go home, and then they're all up in New York City. But the Big 12 might be the spot.
Yeah, I could see that.
It really might be the spot. And I think Brett Yormark would be willing to work with them. He's been creative about a few things. I could see that, honestly, if that's why I keep coming back around. ACC needs to get its stuff together.
Sure. Well,
if they don't, Big 12 might actually be the spot.
We were talking off air, and this goes kind of back to the television side of things, but you and I were talking off air, and I had heard the same thing, a couple years ago, that, one of the big points from TV's side and from the conference's side right now is okay, it's all about new markets, right? Yeah. So if you've got, say, the SEC network, right? Well, guess where the SEC network really doesn't have a strong footing? In North Carolina and Virginia. Right. Well, if the SEC adds UNC and Virginia, guess what? The SEC network is now on those cable packages in North Carolina and Virginia, right?
And it still matters.
And it still matters. Yeah. And isn't that crazy? Like, I sit here and say to myself, like, how is this in 2024 when, it's all about streaming, right? Like, but no, cable is still driving a lot of this.
A lot of it. Plenty of it. Well, we'll continue this as we get more information. On the other side of the break, though, the voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott, going to join us, talk some baseball here as we hit the home stretch of the season. You're listening to the Postgame Show.
Usually I'm used to doing traffic in the morning, so now I get to send everybody home. I feel like I'm bookending the day. Blythewood at I-77, also Bush River Road at I-20, and looking at I-26 eastbound there at exit 82, an issue. Also Shady Grove Road at Broad River Road. Broad River near I-26, that appears to be what we have going on. And overnight low of about 52, looking for a high tomorrow of about 80. Right now, 74.
Time to talk some Carolina baseball, a little hoops as well. The voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott, going to join us here on the guest line. Jay Phillips. Mike Gillespie is hanging out today. Jen Jensen at Master Control, as you just heard, as Elijah Campbell enjoys a couple of days off. Always good to have the voice of the Gamecocks on with us, coming off a good weekend, Derek, by and large, in terms of how a lot of things went, but bad in the sense that you didn't win the series, albeit against a very good team. Your number one takeaway from the weekend against Arkansas?
Well, honestly, I think there's a few things that would be tied at the top of my list. One of those is really that concept of things are always so fluid in the course of a baseball season. Guys get hot, guys get cold, people get hurt. You have other folks who have to step up. And for South Carolina, that's been evident the last few weeks with the way Dalton Reeves had to step up when we had the concussion for Cole Messina and made himself a factor. And now we've seen from Austin Brenling the fact that even if things don't go the way you want them to, you keep working at it. You keep grinding. He came in here as a grad transfer, thought he'd be a factor in the outfield rotation. Just didn't happen. Had a rough fall, but he didn't give up. He kept working at it, didn't get a bad attitude, and that perseverance pays off, and he ends up out of nowhere coming into the starting, at least to the rest of us, to the outside world.
Right.
Jumps into the starting lineup and didn't look like he was overwhelmed at all. Not by the fact that he'd set out for so much, not by the fact that his previous stop was a lower-level program, not by the fact that he was facing the best pitching staff maybe in the country. He competed, man, and that was great to see. And that's what it takes, because over the course of a long baseball season, you're going to have ups and downs.
Ethan Petrie, we talked to Coach Kingston about this on yesterday's show. Derek may have had his worst weekend as a college baseball player, and it's just an unfortunate happenstance. Mark said that they charted it and that Arkansas really just didn't throw him strikes. 15% of the pitches Ethan saw were in the strike zone, according to Carolina's analytics. From your perspective and Stewart's perspective, what did you see that just wasn't there beyond the obvious I just gave? What else did you maybe see from Arkansas and making sure Ethan Petrie was not a factor?
Yeah, they had a plan. They were confident in how they were going to pitch him, and a couple things go in that direction. One, Stewart, because in SEC play knows everybody. Mm-hmm. He went down and chatted with Arkansas's pitching coach and was told unequivocally that the guy they were not going to let beat them was Cole Messina. That if they had to intentionally walk Cole Messina in a spot, they didn't mind doing it. He was the one that they felt most worried about. And that tells you something as it relates to Ethan, because, Ethan had just come off a great weekend against Florida, and we know what he can do. Told me that they had a plan. They had a plan they thought on how to get him out, and that they felt confident that they could execute that. And if that meant pitching around Cole Messina when Petrie was behind him in the order, that they were going to do that. And they did, and they were successful at it. So I think it says a lot about the plan they had. And, look, that happens, man. There's every team has its own different strategy about how to pitch different guys. And you'll see some teams that, control a guy, and other teams that just can't figure it out and get worn out by one guy time over time. And Arkansas did. They had a real good plan. And, to say they didn't throw him strikes would imply almost that he didn't, they took the bat out of his hands, and they didn't do that. They just they effectively threw pitches where they could get him out.
Yeah.
And and they did that. And I was impressed with how they approached him. And it's one thing Stewart said I thought was important. He says it's a tough weekend for a young man, but what he's got to do is go watch film of exactly what they did to him, because word travels fast in this league. And if somebody figures out how to get you out, they're all going to copycat. So you better figure out what your counter is.
Hey, Derek, Dylan Eskew obviously was pretty phenomenal on Saturday, I thought. 5.2 innings, longest, I believe, of the year. He hadn't started a game in over a month. Does he work his way back into the rotation now after this Saturday?
Certainly back. Yeah, I think he's back in the conversation. It's just, this is one of those years where there's a handful of guys who all seem to pitch better in long relief than they do as a starter. So to see him actually pitch well in the starting role, I would think that's got to point towards giving him another look. And, the thing with Dylan is nobody ever hit him hard. Mm-hmm. Even when he struggled for a few weeks there and got pushed out of the rotation, it wasn't because he was getting squared up. It was because he would have one inning where things would fall apart on him, and usually it was about location and maybe some mistakes either by him or behind him, and it would be his undoing. And he had an inning like that on Sunday, and he recovered from it. Now, you think about that first run-scoring inning where, they scored 3 runs on 1 hit. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Some of it was his fault. Some of it was the guys behind him. Some of it was just bad luck. But what he did is he came back out in the 3rd inning, and, man, he settled in and really put together what turned out to be the best start of the weekend for the Gamecocks. So, yeah, I would have to imagine that puts him right back in that conversation for the Sunday starter for certain.
Talking to Derek Scott here. Carolina, no midweek game this week, so he and Stewart have a couple of days to enjoy the midweek, and Carolina back at it against a very good Kentucky team this weekend. Derek, when you look right now at the Will Tippett situation, it's tough. When Will got his back going, switching just to right-handed from being a switch hitter, and then a concussion coupled with an MCL sprain, as Mark told us yesterday. So take us through Lee Ellis, what you know of Lee. Obviously, he had a really big miscue the other day that opened the door, and he'll want to go back and correct those kind of things too. But looks like he's going to be the shortstop for this ball club for at least the next couple of weekends.
Yeah, it does, and even with that miscue, that was what opened it. But Carolina had the double play ball that would have closed that again and didn't turn it. So it certainly wasn't all on him, and he will need to probably just work on making those plays more consistently based on repetition, which is the more he's out there, the better it'll be for him. He's got a ton of energy. Obviously his quickness and his foot speed is outstanding. He made one play where he could not get the out, but he got back into the hole, made the play from a knee, and immediately pop up and throw, and nearly got the runner. And one of those plays that not just every middle infielder has the ability to either make or at least make close. So I think the skill set is certainly there. And as far as at the plate, I like seeing him not look as overwhelmed as he had in some previous at-bats, even though he was facing, like we just said earlier, probably the best pitching in the league, best pitching maybe in the country. He adapted. He had some opposite field swings. He got himself on base, multiple ways. And the same thing was the case with Will. You don't have him in the lineup for that. You'd certainly like it to be solid, but right now, as a freshman in this league playing shortstop, if he needs to focus all of his, time and efforts on just being, steady at that position, I think we'll all understand how that could be the case, and hopefully it will be something that will allow him to grow a little bit, because you play a team like Kentucky this weekend, it's magnified because they are maybe the best middle infield in the league. They do not make mistakes defensively, and they also will pressure you when they're at the plate because they run more than anybody else in the conference. So yeah, he's going to be under the magnifying glass in that regard for a lot of reasons.
Derek has agreed to hang out with us here for another segment. Want to get into one more baseball note and then a couple of off-season basketball notes as Lamont Paris's team continues to make some adjustments through both recruiting and the portal. The voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott, hanging out with us as the postgame show continues. Welcome back into the postgame show on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Mike Gillespie hanging out, and Jen Jensen at Master Control. Elijah has a couple of days off, and thanks to the voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott, for hanging out with us for just a little bit. So, Derek, before I talk a little hoops with you, just one more quick note on this baseball team looking ahead right now, 9-9. Mark told us, they're 14th in the RPI, 9th strength of schedule. He likes some of the other metrics. In your opinion, this team needs to finish where in terms of conference record to maybe feel better about hosting? How important, I guess I'm going to ask you too, especially, is winning the series against Kentucky this weekend?
Well, those are always such moving targets to me. I probably always think I'm dodging that question, but I don't think you can ever say your number has to be this because you're not operating in a vacuum. Everybody else's outcomes impact what yours how yours are viewed. So in the norm, I know in the norm it's 15. You got to get to 500 in conference play in this league to be in that hosting argument. And I certainly think that's still a pretty safe way to play it. But I think last year there may have been a 14 and 16 team that got to host. As long as the RPI stays healthy, and it certainly A is, and B has no reason. We have no reason to think it'll go anywhere, downward based on how good the schedule is the rest of the way. About this weekend, yes. Kentucky's crazy good this year, but you don't look at them and see the kinds of major league pieces like we saw Friday night on the mound for Arkansas, like we saw with Jack Caglione, like, we saw in the A&M heart of their order. It's weird. And I appreciate them because it's a little bit like South Carolina's men's basketball team. Just the sum's better than the parts. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's awesome to see as long as it's not, impeding your abilities to succeed. So I'm going to be anxious to get a look at them. But I certainly don't think South Carolina looks at this series as, wow, we're going to have to play perfect, beat this team 2 out of 3. Now, will it help if the weather stays normal and you don't get disrupted into a double header and things of that nature? Yeah, absolutely. It'll see if we can get some fans back in here like we had Friday night and create an atmosphere. All that can be really helpful. But, I don't think anybody's got to be Superman to handle that team in an effective manner just because of what we've seen from them against the likes of A&M and Arkansas, where you weren't that far. Certainly against Arkansas, you weren't that far from 2 out of 3.
Speaking of men's basketball that you alluded to in there, let's go there for a little bit. A couple of big pieces of news this week. First off, of course, last week, I guess now, Cam Scott signing, getting out of his NLI at Texas, and will now stay home and play for the Gamecocks. And then home, at least sort of, Jordan Butler of Greenville leaving Missouri and committing to South Carolina in the portal from both the perspective of, highly rated high school kids in this state, being from this state, and then the momentum Lamont is building. How big is this in your estimation for this program looking ahead?
This is where if I felt better, I'd do my Donald Trump imitation and tell you how huge it is. But it is, man. I mean, we all have said this for so long, haven't we? Build the fence around the state. Find a way to keep the best players in state. Or in the instance of Mr. Butler, if they get over the fence, make sure they know that we'll let them walk through on their way back in if they change their mind. And that's what this looks like. And I mean, you think about it. Since LP got here, Gigi, top recruit in the state. Colin Murray-Boyle, top recruit in the state, at least in my opinion. Scott, definitely top recruit in the state. And then you've got Butler, who was right there with Colin as far as last year's consideration. I mean, that's how you build a program in a league like this that can be consistently competitive. At least it's the foundation of it. You can't be everything, but it's a great building block. And I'm just really excited about what that means. And then, just the facts of it is, with the portal, there's comings and there's goings. And so if you lose Michi and everybody is so deflated about it, but then you find Cam Scott, okay. If you see Josh Gray decide that he's going elsewhere and he's just a fan favorite, and then within a day's time, you've got Butler, that's the way this current world works. You got to make sure you get, you work it both ways because you're going to have people vacating. But it's certainly a bit of a roller coaster ride, but it's not just here. I mean, look around the league and see what's going on at Kentucky and so many other places right now. Nobody's got a smooth sail going on right now. It doesn't feel like,
Yeah. Well, I know you're a little under the weather, so I'm glad you don't have a midweek game this week, so you can rest up a little bit. But
you and me both.
Yeah, but do appreciate you taking time for us to at least exercise the pipes a little bit there. So good stuff. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week. Appreciate you as always.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, man. Good stuff. That is Derek Scott, the voice of the Gamecocks. Again, Carolina and Kentucky back at it on Friday night at 7 o'clock over at Founders Park. And like you said, maybe getting that big atmosphere in there for this weekend. He's right. Kentucky, honestly, I don't know which is a bigger overall surprise in league play this year, Mike. Is it LSU having such a bad conference season, or is it Kentucky having such a great season? I'm not sure.
It's Kentucky. I mean, it's absolutely Kentucky because, look at LSU, Florida. They're both kind of in the same position. I mean, Florida's not doing as poorly as LSU is this year, but they both lost just a tremendous amount of talent, and they were the two that played for the national title last year. So, yeah, Kentucky's definitely the biggest surprise.
It's a huge surprise, and I love that analogy. They're just they're greater than some of their parts. I think that's an interesting way to put it. I know the kid from Central Connecticut that we saw in the tournament last year went there, and that was one that Carolina would like to have had. A lot of schools would have liked to have had. Hour 3 headlines. More on spring football from Shane Beamer coming up on the postgame show. It is 5 o'clock news time on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Also, the final hour of the postgame show. Jay Phillips inside the Herndon Chevy Studios. Mike Gillespie hanging out with me here this afternoon. Appreciate Mike's time. And the incomparable Jen Jensen at Master Control as Elijah Campbell enjoys a couple of days off. I am doing my level-headed best to not cause as much angst for Jen as that guy in the morning does, whose name does not rhyme with Preston Thorne.
It does not. It does not. Preston was a good addition. We enjoy him a lot.
I hope I am passing my test.
You are.
I know I have a lot more in common with that other guy sometimes. That oh wait, Jen needs me to. She's getting something.
Where'd she go?
I have not needed my Nerf gun with you. I have a Nerf pistol.
Thank goodness.
If he gets off track, it's got a pretty good firing range.
Oh, please tell me that he's been hit in the forehead at least once.
It's been close. He's like, "What are you doing?" Almost hit me in the face. It's like, well, no, I'm technically trying to go for the chest.
Sure.
But yeah, so just so you know, I have not had to have this out all day.
Hey, that's good.
So,
Thank you. Let's knock on whatever this Formica is or some such. And see if I can hold for the rest of the hour. We will do our best. Okay, so a couple of things to get to here. If we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if you have not yet heard, a judge in Tallahassee has ordered Florida State and the ACC to enter mediation in the hopes of settling their lawsuits against one another. These are basically two different suits. The ACC filed first up in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. The next day, Florida State filed their case in Leon County, Florida. This, again, is a Tallahassee judge, Judge John Cooper, who has given Florida State an extra 7 days to amend their complaint and basically tell him why this case needs to be heard in Florida, because he was otherwise ready, if you read between the legal lines, ready to dismiss, which is what the ACC wanted to do. Basically, the ACC says, Judge, they haven't told you why it is that our case in North Carolina is worse than this case in Florida. The judge agreed, but he gave FSU time. The FSU attorneys told him they needed about a week. That's what he gave them. Then he gave the ACC 3 weeks after that to respond. Yep. So this, in about a month-ish, we will have another hearing before Judge Cooper. But again, in the interim, he has ordered them, which is basically Florida law, ordered them to go into mediation in the hopes of trying to settle this before it has to go to court. I don't see that happening.
No. I don't either. Well, the mediation will happen.
Yes, the mediation will happen. The settlement,
nothing will come from it.
Yeah, the settlement I do not see.
Nope, because the ACC is going to say, you signed the contract. So the end of story. And Florida State's going to say, but we want more money. And then it's the impasse that we see right now, and we're back to court.
And how much, if any, impact this has on Clemson's case remains to be seen. Again, Clemson is saying a lot of the same things that Florida State is saying, but as I was told from an attorney friend, Clemson is almost asking more through the lawsuit for an opinion, which is interesting.
Yes. Yeah, well, and that's actually an interesting part of this, too, which is the ACC is saying that Florida State's kind of wasting the court's time by basically using the court as an opinion, right, to sort of gauge where this stands legally, which I actually think holds a lot of weight.
I agree.
Because they haven't formally left the conference, and to the ACC's point, Florida State hasn't even told the ACC that they're shopping around for other conferences, which you're supposed to do legally.
Yeah, and are they? I mean, again, does FSU know something we don't? Does Clemson know something we don't? I get the idea that they don't really have a landing spot at this point. They just want to know what it might look like. And listen, I don't even think I'll be careful as I say it this way, but like the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, any other entity can't really enter into any kind of discussion behind closed doors. That might be some form of collusion. And again, I'm not an attorney. I don't know for sure, but like the Southeastern Conference, I don't think that anybody at Clemson is calling people in Birmingham going, hey,
right.
If this, like, are y'all gonna, are we good? Are we good? Because, I mean, at that point, Disney's probably going to be like, what the heck are you doing,
But
man?
I think that's why Florida State is going to court, to let everybody know, hey, we're open to business.
But I don't think anybody is going to call them back and go, oh, cool.
No, I don't think so. And, you know, what's funny about this, too, it's almost like the opposite situation. Like, if you lose your job or something, they tell you, like, don't file a lawsuit against your employer because that looks really bad to the people who may try to hire you, right? Well, it's almost like the opposite with this situation. It's like Florida State is like, no, we're going to file the lawsuit to let everybody know, hey, you can come and get Florida State for your conference.
Which, if I may, is one of the reasons, and this would not apply to Clemson, but this is one of the reasons why I say I don't know if this is going to work for Florida State inside the Southeastern Conference one day, because you're basically taking a dump all over Disney.
Yeah.
And who's footing the bill?
Yeah, but I mean, yes, I agree with that. But remember, like, Disney and ESPN don't think of the ACC that fondly. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given up games to Raycom. Right? I mean, like, who in this day and age is giving up college football games?
Yeah, well, like, I mean, hey,
so, but it's the product.
Saturday afternoon. It's Wake Forest and Boston College.
No one wants it. I mean, and of course, Raycom was like, of course we'll take it because we've got nothing else.
Although Wake Forest football is pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah, they're fun to watch.
Yeah.
No, but like with the FSU angle of trying to have all of this go public in Florida, and having potential trade secrets exposed.
Yeah.
And Disney does not like that.
Yeah, and so ESPN came out and issued their stance on it, which they basically want all of these documents sealed, because then it's going to come out how much Disney is going to charge for these.
Well, and how they got to some of these things.
I
get it.
Yeah,
like
I do
these
too.
are trade secrets
for sure. But isn't it already kind of out? Like, it's going to be $575 million that they're going to.
I think some of it is, but I think some of the other stuff is a little more confidential.
Yeah.
And Disney wants it that way.
Yeah.
And that's why I separate the two between saying ESPN and Disney.
100%.
This is Disney. Yes, they'll be shown on ESPN. I get it. But this is not the people in Bristol aren't running this show, man.
No.
These are the people in Burbank.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's very true. They have a rooting interest.
Yeah. I mean, it's all one thing, but I'm just saying that. But when it comes to whatever gajillion dollars, that's Disney's money.
Sure.
And that's where I'm going with it. That's why I wouldn't be a big fan of what FSU is attempting to do. We will see. But again, next week, Florida State will amend their complaint. Again, then the ACC will have 3 weeks to do something about it. And then we'll see what happens next. Speaking of the business of college athletics, as we continue our integrated media headlines of the day, the Pac-12 is no longer an autonomous conference, at least as of August the 2nd. Now, you may say, what is an autonomous conference? Well, that's the official term for the so-called Power Five. Within the NCAA construct, they are the Autonomy Five. And those conferences years ago were given a lot more leeway within the rules of the NCAA to act in their own best interests without, as I have said, and it sounds mean, I know, Mike, the have-nots being able to vote against them for certain things simply because you couldn't afford it.
Sure.
When the Power Five schools, the Autonomy Five schools could afford most of whatever these things might have been. In my personal opinion, and again, I'm not always supposed to do this during the news, but I've found that I do it anyway because I'm a talk show host. They haven't taken enough advantage of the autonomy they were granted. I think if they had a few years back, a lot of what we're currently seeing may actually have been avoided, but that's beside the point now. That said, the Pac-12, of course, will officially only have 2 members next school year. It doesn't look like anything's going to happen in the short term in terms of a merger with the Mountain West, where basically the Mountain West takes over, but they keep the name.
Right.
And that's kind of what's being talked about.
Yeah. Well, and it should.
I like that. I think you should keep the name, and you should invite those schools in. Yep. But they were hoping, I think, for the autonomy And at least for now, that's not going to happen. And you can always revisit this.
Yeah, they've got a 2-year grace period, I believe.
And they're going to make a lot of money from the departing schools, Oregon State and Washington State.
Well, they've got to make money from something because their media deal was so
bad. But they're going to be, I think they're going to be okay. They're not going to be great, but I think they're going to be okay. I think the settlement that was reached was actually advantageous to all parties. But I would hope that we get to keep the name Pac-12 and invite those, your Colorado States and Air Forces and New Mexico's and such and San Diego State. That could be a solid league. It's not going to be what it was, duh. But again, here's another one. If you had acted better, Larry Scott, then the Pac-12 doesn't have to go away.
No.
This borders on criminal, and I almost do mean that literally, just for like gross negligence of leadership. There won't be any prosecutions or anything like that. This didn't need to happen, man.
No.
This just did not need to happen.
I mean, the Pac-12 network was a disaster from start to finish. The contract negotiations with the television networks were a disaster. And it didn't need to be that way. Of course, now they're obviously paying the price for it. And UCLA, USC, Oregon, they did what anybody would do.
Right. And that's why I said it earlier today, and I'm going to say it again here. This is why, from a sports fan perspective, he tried to say in English, I don't want to see the ACC go away.
Right.
I just don't. I grew up around here, and you grew up. I know FSU joined when you were. I don't know how old you were then, but regardless, I grew up with the ACC. Even if South Carolina,
me too,
left the Atlantic Coast Conference when I was like 3 months old, man. All right, and that's how old I am. But I like the ACC.
Yeah.
Yes, I pulled for the Gamecocks. Yes, I went to the University of South Carolina. Everybody knows that. But I like the ACC. I used to just revere the ACC men's basketball tournament. It was fantastic sports.
Yeah.
I don't want all this, the ACC is going to blow up and all that. I sincerely hope not.
I do too.
Especially after seeing the demise of the Pac-12. Because, again, it doesn't need to happen. When certain things go away, sometimes they need to.
Right.
The Pac-12 didn't need to go away. And the ACC does not need to go away. I understand the dynamics that are at work and why it might. But I sincerely hope it does not. So I hope, to go back to the first story that we had as we couple this one into it, that we don't see that happen. I hope there are enough level heads that can work something out. I understand everybody's beef. I do. But I don't think that's good for sports, man. I genuinely do not think it's going to be good for sports if the ACC blows up too. We don't need that. But for now, the Pac-12 will be dropped. So I don't know how much that's really going to change what Washington State and Oregon State are doing right now.
No, and I don't think that it's a surprise either, and it's going to change anybody's opinion of the Pac-12 because it was probably pretty low to begin with.
Right.
I love that we're still calling it the Pac-12, just like the Big Ten and or the Big 12.
Right.
When it had how many 10 schools and then 14? Thank God that the SEC and ACC didn't pigeonhole themselves to a number and all of that.
Not a number, but at least for the Southeastern Conference, by and large, it's still relatively Southeastern. But as Terry and I joked a few months back, Berkeley and Palo Alto are still on the Pacific Coast. They didn't move the conference, or the campus rather.
Right.
So that is kind of, and if I'm not mistaken, Mike, and you check me if I'm wrong here, because I mentioned I'm good with maps earlier, Jen.
Yes, like a homing pigeon.
Dallas, Texas, also not on the Atlantic coast.
Last I checked.
I'm going to Google that.
Yeah, somebody look that up for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask.
I thought there was a Gulf or something somewhere.
But you know what? To be fair, you know what else is not on the Atlantic coast? Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Or
Missouri.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So they're in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
good point.
Saying. So they've already, the ACC long ago said, to hell with the ocean.
Yeah.
I think they need to just totally change all of the names, and that way you can pick whatever you want.
Yeah.
I just think it should be more of a grid type thing.
I know Pennsylvania is really, 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 really close to the Atlantic coast, but technically not a coastal state. Technically.
No.
Or maybe they can just name the conferences like how much the exit fee is going to be. Like this one's named $575 million.
There you go.
So that everybody knows if you leave early, if you terminate your contract, you owe $575 million.
The jackpot conference.
Yes. The jackpot conference.
And
regional food conference.
Yeah. See, that'd be fun with that. Just get the name sponsored.
Do not pass go.
Oh my gosh! See, there you go. Now that'll just confuse everybody if you get the sponsorship thing going.
We had this story yesterday, but it is now becoming more official. Both the Wall Street Journal and the Athletic reporting that Caitlin Clark's deal with Nike is getting ready to be signed, a $28 million 8-year deal, and she will get her own shoe. Way to go, Caitlin!
The highest paid women's basketball player of all time.
Yeah,
in terms of shoe deals.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet her salary in the WNBA is only $76,000.
It's unreal.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
$76,000.
She could donate that to charity at this point.
She probably will.
Mm-hmm.
She actually probably will. That's the Integrated Media headlines of the day, 803-948-8327 for all of your home theater, home security needs, and so much more, including great outdoor system. Call our good friends at Integrated Media. More comments from Shane Beamer on spring football coming up. Welcome back into the postgame show on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Mike Gillespie, Jen Jensen, Elijah Campbell has the day off. And if I may, real quick, to all my Chelsea friends. Arsenal with a 5-0
close match, yeah.
A 5-0 win today.
Yeah.
In North London. So
yeah, it was 1-0 for a while, and then I looked up and it was 5-0, and I'm like, oh, what?
So, and I bet Jay can math that equation.
Yeah, that's let's see. That's one whole hand of goals.
Yes.
And the other hand with nothing.
Yes.
I have this many.
Yeah, that's right.
So
and then a fist.
I can do that. So to George and to Pearson and to all you other Chelsea people, sorry.
Rough day.
You know who you are.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Jay's not not a sore loser or winner at all.
So it's a lot like like Carolina and Clemson. Like, I'm going to try to think of a school like, I don't know. Carolina and Clemson don't like each other, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a team in London called Tottenham.
Yes.
Is Arsenal's rival.
My son is a Tottenham fan. Well, and I think Preston has become one.
Yeah. Well, my wife is one, and Michael Haney is one.
Okay. So they're all in good company.
Yeah, and that game is being played this Sunday, Arsenal versus Tottenham.
And Tottenham just lost a player, like a pretty good somebody. Or he went out, he got injured, hamstring or something.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
Is this soccer?
Yeah.
Are we talking about soccer?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
And,
I don't know much.
But like Clemson and Carolina, like let's just say both hate Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like Chelsea's kind of like Georgia. Like Arsenal and Tottenham hate each other, but they both really hate Chelsea.
I gotcha. Okay.
There's even a saying in London for those three teams. Like, I'll just use it from my perspective as an Arsenal fan. Like, I hate Tottenham because I'm an Arsenal fan. I hate Chelsea because I'm human.
Nice.
So
very good.
So there's
that makes you understand a little better.
Does that help?
Yep.
You know,
yep.
Like nobody likes Chelsea unless you're a Chelsea fan. There's no like, oh yeah, Chelsea. Like,
not at all.
There's no gray area with Chelsea.
Okay.
So
we learned something new today.
There you go. All right. Some spring football for you here. First, let me get back to our poll questions, and then we'll let you hear a little bit more from Coach Beamer's cut lists from the weekend. So, the poll questions. First, with the Gamecock spring game in the rearview mirror, what is your expectation level for the 24 football season relative to where it was in January? A, more optimistic. B, basically the same. C, less optimistic. 70.7% of you say it's basically the same. 17% more optimistic, 12.2% less. Then the follow-up question today was what those expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
A, 9 or more wins. B, 7 or 8 wins. C, 6 wins and any bowl. D, no bowl game. Now, these are not hopes. These are expectations. 6 wins in any bowl, 51.7%. 7 or 8 wins, 28.4%. No bowl game, 14.2%. That's dipped a little from when we last visited this poll question in the 3 o'clock hour.
We're convincing people.
Actually just dipped again. It just changed.
Yes.
13.9%.
Yes.
So they're still going down. As I say that. And 5.5.
That number below 10.
Just 5.5% of you say 9 or more victories, which I do think that could be a bit of a stretch.
That makes sense.
This season.
Sure.
But you never know. Eric says, sadly, as a 40-year fan, I have 0 expectations anymore. Well, it is kind of sad, Eric. The 11-3s were nice and all, 11-2, but we've been treated to so many 5-7s. With the 24 schedule, ? He says, I'll take the under. So much talent out the door, and the O-line remains a screen door. Beamer has to prove it this year. The offensive line was not good last season. A lot of true freshmen had to play. How much better did they get? How many injuries can you prevent? I know that's one of the biggest things that 100%. Shane has talked about this offseason is going into all the film, all the questions of the players. What do we need to do to prevent the injuries? And I talked to a few people that know football, and a lot of it, in their opinion, was about strength relative to, like keeping fit, like maintenance. In other words, these are young men. They've got to literally just get stronger before they're being asked to do some of the things that they're doing, right? So that's number one there. But listen, Eric,
that's been an issue though for a long. I mean, going back to Muschamp, remember all of those soft tissue injuries?
Yeah.
I mean, Debo had one every 5 days, just getting out of bed, and it was like, what? Debo's
and I think
again?
some guys are like that now. And I even think back to a guy like Percy Harvin, who I was like, listen, when Percy's 100%, there's no one better.
Sure.
But if Percy's 98%, he won't play.
Yeah. Yeah, and the migraines,
whatever it might have been, and that's not a knock. Right. It's just, and I see a lot of that. We see it in football now. I see it in soccer a lot. Like these guys are all like fine-tuned Ferraris, man. And one little thing goes off. This isn't like your grandma's Buick,
right? That'll
kind of lug along, right? And you maybe need more of that. Can you find a way to do that up front? Eric, in terms of you saying Beamer has to prove it, or what is it? Again, this goes back to the level of expectation. What is it? Getting back to a bowl? Let's see, I would argue you need to do more than that. But Shane's not getting fired. I mean, if Carolina goes 0-12, Shane's out of a job.
Sure.
Honestly, I don't know if it. Look, I'm not going to sit here and do. Shane's not getting fired.
I don't think so either.
He's not getting fired.
I think there's a little bit more heat this year based off of last year.
But Shane puts heat on himself, as he's told us.
Sure.
I mean, he knows that. Listen, they had a team capable of winning 7 or 8 games last year.
They had a third round, maybe second round quarterback.
Yeah, it just things, But when that offensive line, I mean, Spencer was sacked 40 times. How many times was he under duress? 100?
Yes.
Seriously.
No, yeah.
Right? I mean, if you're sacked 40 times.
Yeah, and no run game.
Right. I mean, how? So, I mean, think of that. That alone. And that's like, duh. It needs to be corrected. They know that. They are working actively on that. If there is one facet of this football team that I know they're working on more than any other, and they know needs to be worked on, it is the offensive line. There is zero doubt of that.
And that's why you bring in a guy like Sean Elliott, who technically is tight ends coach, but he's also the run game coordinator, which I think is a very interesting title for him to have, and you see why he was brought in.
Yes. Right? And this is not a knock on Lonnie. Sean's taken over all of that. And that's a great thing, because that will help Lonnie. And Sean can help Marquell. Sean's great at what he does. Yeah. And you go back and you think about those great years that Eric alluded to, who was the co-coordinator. Sean and GA worked so well together with Coach to make that offense what it was. You don't have GA anymore, but you got a guy like Dowell Loggins who has a terrific reputation. Sean's going to help. And again, you got to get the strength. And again, like I said, there's strength and there's conditioning. They do work together, but will these guys get stronger and prevent some of the injuries? That's one of the things I've been told they're taking a hard look at. And honestly, Eric, the last point I'll make here, and we will get to a couple of things from Shane in the drive around. The schedule's always hard. I'm getting a little. I'm not angry at fans. Okay, that's not what I mean when I say this, but I'm hearing, that schedule's so hard. Y'all, it's always hard. It's really not, in my opinion, it's really not a lot harder this year. It's a different kind of hard. And the one point that I've made yesterday to Terry, Mike, was, and you mentioned it earlier, back-to-back weeks in Tuscaloosa and Norman.
Yeah.
That's a big ask.
Yep. Bama, Oklahoma.
That's a big ask.
Tough.
But LSU and Ole Miss come here. I know those are hard games, and they're better than you. But how much better is Ole Miss than you? I don't know. They are, but that's winnable. LSU comes here early. Maybe you get them. I mean, you got to take those chances. You beat Kentucky 2 years in a row. I getting tired of the whole, Kentucky's better than Carolina thing. I don't know if they are.
Well, and Carolina doesn't have to play Georgia.
Right, and you don't have Georgia. You don't have an improving Tennessee.
Right.
You might like to play Florida again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but you're in the Southeastern Conference, and you play Clemson. Every schedule is going to be hard. Drive around the SEC is next. Love telling you about Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. You can check out all they can offer for you for your banking services, palmettocitizens.org. Applying for any kind of loans that they offer, credit cards, car loan, home equity line, mortgage. They do all those things for you. And, of course, you're checking your savings like all the big banks. But unlike the big banks, everything stays right here locally. They don't loan out money out of state, even out of the country. Everything stays here to help neighbors, local businesses, charitable organizations, and they've been doing it since the 1930s. That's right, more than 87 years ago is when Palmetto Citizens started. Check them out online today. See why they can offer you lower rates and fewer fees for things like a home equity line. And a 10-year draw means you're not borrowing one big lump. As your family's needs change and grow, hey, they'll work with you to make sure that this is something that fits your budget. Again, any and all of it. Check them out at palmettocitizens.org. Join my wife and me as customers and achieve your potential.
So we have a few accidents out there to make you aware of. Augusta Highway at Park Lane Road. So I guess it's Highway 1 at Park Lane. Also, Highway 1 near Rabin Road. I-26 eastbound there at exit 82, still working that earlier tie-up, as well as I-77 northbound just after Forest Drive. Knox Abbott Drive near State Street. And Highway 321 near I-20, an accident there. So do be careful out there this afternoon. And we are looking for a high today, or I guess an overnight low of about 51 and a high tomorrow of 80. And by the weekend, we'll be in the low 80s. Really no rain in the forecast. We'll take that as well. But right now it's 78 on the afternoon with Jay.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips, Mike Gillespie, Jen Jensen with you. Elijah has a couple of days off. want to get to one more. If I'm not gonna go on a rant here because I've done this before. But I was just telling Mike, no.
Come on, let it out.
We got a guy just hit us on Twitter named Calvin. He's probably a really nice guy.
I see the veins starting to pop.
But he says, he sent this, I guess, during our last segment. He says, my complaint is we, the Gamecocks, he means, my complaint is we are a 6-6 program with 11-1 ticket prices. I don't agree with that. South Carolina's ticket prices, like a lot of things with South Carolina athletics, are in the middle in the pack of the SEC. Mm. But I was telling Mike earlier, and some of you who have been around me a long time on this radio station certainly remember the Yes campaign that Eric Hyman instituted back, 15, 16, 17 years ago, whatever it was. South Carolina was so far behind in booster club revenues and just athletic revenues in general from their ticket buying public relative to the schools that you were at the time being measured against, those three being, in no particular order, Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee. And I remember, Mike, I was telling you, I did some research on those three schools and what their giving levels looked like and where you sat in the stadium, because Carolina had no seat fees back then or anything like that, and those were the things that were being proposed. Mm. And you can imagine at the time, especially, UF was at the height of its powers, and it cost a lot of money to get a seat at the Swamp.
Oh, my dad remembers.
Yeah. And UT was good then.
That's why
still.
I didn't go to private school, by the way.
Right, and Georgia is good as well. Everybody knows. But Carolina was so far behind. And without going into how far behind they were, I remember fielding a lot of calls from people like this guy probably, who were not happy and who had been paying, like roundhouse club level to sit in sections 4, 5, and 6. Now, some of you paid full scholarship or more to sit in sections 4, 5, or 6. And for those who don't quite know, sections 4, 5, and 6, West Lower, between the 40s. All right, that's the best seats in the house. Again, you were paying but you'd been doing it since whatever year, and so you had your points, your priority, and whatnot. Guys would call in, I don't want to pay that much more. I've been doing this the whole time, and I deserve. I was like, look, you're going to get first priority here, but. What I'm leading up to is, to not bore you with any of the number details, is I came up with something that I still use sometimes to this day. It's not quite as prevalent as it once was. I said you can't have Southeastern Conference success at Conference USA prices. And I'll never let go of that.
Yep.
Because you can't. Mm-hmm. And I told you what I told one guy one time. I was like, there's no chicken or egg here. It was like, which came first, the success on the field, which prompts me to give more? Sure. No, you've joined the Southeastern Conference, and for the first 15 years of your life in the Southeastern Conference, you allowed yourself to fall so far behind in revenue that you either need to get the hell out and go to Conference USA, where you want to not spend any money, or you need to come up. If you want to be measured against those teams, you got to be measured across the board.
That's exactly what's happening with NIL right now.
Yeah.
The same situation. And, some of my best friends went to USC. Some of my best friends went to Florida. I know I think the Garnet Trust is doing a better job right now than Florida's Florida Victorious. And what I was telling you off air, that whole Jaden Rashada thing set Florida back a little bit. I think they'll recover. I think they'll be okay. But there is this sentiment, in Columbia, in Gainesville, all over the place, that they don't trust the system. Right? But, again, that's...
Well, that first bozo that was doing whatever at Florida,
justified.
Like that guy,
but it's also justified when you see, this kid leaves Alabama for Iowa, takes all of the NIL money at Iowa, the offensive lineman, then goes back to Alabama, and with all of the, what was it, $100,000 at Iowa?
Well, Iowa's even said, I think, Caden Proctor you're talking about, and I don't know, Iowa kind of came out and said, hey, listen, we never actually paid him. I don't know,
but it was still. I'm
sure
that
he did something. And by the way, he's not officially at Alabama yet. Because he can't be. Because he can't.
Right. But they still wasted their time.
Yeah.
I think that's the.
No, I get it. I get it.
The part from the NIL's perspective that's like, look, guys, we could have been courting somebody else while we were courting you, and this was a waste of time.
And I look, I don't mean to sound harsh to this guy Calvin or anyone else that may feel that way. I get the sentiment that you're attempting to express. Yeah. But all I'm going to tell you is it's not changing. They're not going to lower the prices. They're not going to lower the seat premiums.
And now with the NIL, you're just going to have to pay more.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day.
I mean, and
right?
this is where I don't mean to sound ugly or harsh or whatever, but you cannot go.
Yeah.
And someone else will fill your void.
Sure.
And they will. And again, I know that sounds harsh, and I don't mean it to. I'm not saying, hey, suck it up there, pal. You do have a choice. There's no gun at your head, but you're not going to lower your prices. They need the revenue. But I come back. Right? You can't have SEC success at Conference USA prices. It's not possible. Period. End of story. There's no debating it. There's no, well, I just would rather see them. I know you would. I get it. You'd rather see them win more for what you're paying. Every sports fan would. How many years did Chicago Cub fans buy season tickets to Wrigley Field to see the team lose 90 games? Yeah. You're still doing it because it's a popular seat.
Right.
People like to go to Wrigley.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know what else to say. I mean, if it's the Oakland A's, hey, yeah, basically they'll pay you to come.
Yeah. Or the Marlins.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen in the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah.
Even at Vandy. They actually charge money at Vandy.
Yeah.
True story.
Well, they can afford it.
So, and even Vandy now,
grads can afford it.
Even Vandy now is finally spending a lot of their SEC revenue. I think Vandy's in the midst of like a $400 million capital campaign across the board in athletics. That's good. That's great. That's great. So, I get it, Calvin. You want to see him win more, and I don't think this team should ever settle for 6-6. That's why I say I have in my mind, as somebody who's been around for a while now, and when I saw the bar raised, I realized that you don't have to reset the bar all the time. That's why I say eight wins as a mental bar every year is a fine goal to shoot for until such time as you could maintain that for a bit and then begin to ratchet things up a notch. But lowering it isn't going to be something that coincides with, Ray Tanner or whomever comes after Ray Tanner, whenever that may be, and even 20 or 30 years from now when there's been 3 or 4 or 5 ADs that have been here.
Yeah.
You're not just going to go, hey, you know what, let's do this year? Let's really dramatically lower the prices because we had a bad year. I know that sounds great in theory.
Yeah. It's also not a great look for the brand.
But in practice, you just can't do that.
Financially, it makes zero sense.
Right.
And it's a terrible look for the brand, too, because then you're acknowledging that, maybe we're not worth as much as we were charging.
If people stop coming, then okay, you might have an issue. But here's the thing I've seen. They're not stopping.
Yeah.
I mean, that Kentucky environment last year was off the charts, man. Mm-hmm. And that team,
A&M,
that team had a bad run before that run of games. Mm-hmm. And those of you who are watching on YouTube see me shrug like I don't know what else to tell you. Like I'm not trying to be a jerk here.
Yeah.
I'm being realistic with you.
The Tennessee game 2 years ago.
And again, if it's a complaint that's enough of a complaint, again, there's no, and I'm sure some people have peeled off, Mike, but they are replaced by people who, like if somebody pulls off a row 10, seats 6, 7, 8, and 9 or whatever on Section 5, which again I know is a really great seat area. Trust me, it won't sit empty.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, for sure. Absolutely.
I mean, the email will go out to whoever's next on the priority list. Would you like to sit on row 10 in Section 5? And somebody's going to go, hell's yes.
And I'll pay the fees.
Yeah. So, I get it. Well, that was sort of a drive around the SEC. Because I mentioned the letters SEC.
You did?
We drove around Columbia.
Yeah. I'll give you the baseball schedule and update the poll as the postgame show rolls on. All right, welcome back in. Final few minutes of the post-game show on this Tuesday. Jay, Mike, Jen with you. Elijah enjoying a couple of days off. Hope his dad had a good time while he was down here from Tennessee.
Oh, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, hanging out. And
we got him some good food while he was here. You know, food's a little different here than it is in Tennessee.
A little bit. Columbia is such a good foodie town.
It is.
It really is.
It's so underrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if you really start to explore a little bit, it's like, wow. Yeah, we do have a fair amount.
I want to give a shout out again, and this is on, free plug, right? Like we paid for our meal and all that, I assure you. But my wife and my 19-year-old and I this weekend went to the Hollow, brand new restaurant down on Gervais in the Vista. Mm-hmm. They specialize in like game meats, exotic meats. Now they're farm raised and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I told somebody your uncle that goes deer hunting didn't like take his buck to the back door of the kitchen and like say, hey, y'all need some venison.
I say if that's the case, I've got some deer sticks for them. So.
But it was really good. My wife had an elk fillet.
Wow.
My daughter had duck, which is not as exotic, but I do love duck.
Okay.
I had a boar shank.
Wow.
Like braised boar shank.
Interesting.
And when I say it fell off the bone, like basically all I had to do was pick it up and take a fork and go bone removed.
You didn't really throw it, did you?
I wanted to, but no.
Okay. Yeah. Just want to make sure you
if I was
are
at home, I would
back.
have.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, I would have given it to the dog. I guess you can give a dog like a pig shank bone, right?
I don't
you can't
know.
give them chicken.
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean, it's a mammal, so I think you probably can.
I try to avoid giving my 80-pound golden retriever any bone because I know he'll just ingest it.
Yeah, that's what. Oh, I have an 80-pound lab, and she can devour an actual. She cracks them all up. It frightens me.
Yeah.
And yet her teeth are beautiful. So there's that. But yeah, we had a good time down there. All right,
That's
final
great.
results. But this is a good foodie town, man. It is. I'm really, between what's happening on Main Street and down in the Vista these days, Columbia is doing really well with the food scene. And other
It's not great for my wallet.
No, but
because I spend way, way, way too much money.
Well, then you should take the advice that I've given people, Mike, and that is, learn. I mean, you can cook, right?
My wife can cook really.
Learn how to cook.
Yeah.
So she has the good job and she can cook.
You're like, what do you bring to the table?
Do you at least
That's
set
a great
the table?
question. I do sometimes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Load the dishwasher.
It's my amazing personality. That's what
no
it
question.
is.
No question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for going along with that.
So, final results of the poll questions. 71.2% of you say your expectations have not changed for Carolina football after the spring game and the conclusion of spring practice. 16.8% a little more optimistic, 12% a little less optimistic. And so then the follow-up question was, what are those expectations? 9 wins or more, 7 or 8 wins, 6 wins and any bowl, no bowl game. 51.4% of you said 6 wins and a bowl are the expectations for this season. 7 or 8 wins, 29%. No bowl game, 14.3%. 5.3% of you feel very optimistic and go at 9 or more. I think how September goes tells us a lot here. And look, we got plenty of time, so I'm not going to get into this in-depth analysis of the schedule. Yes, it's a hard schedule. You play in the Southeastern Conference, it's always a hard schedule. But you go to Kentucky in week 2. Find a way.
Yeah.
Mississippi comes here 2 weeks after that.
Yeah.
Beat them in Columbia.
You and I were talking off air about this, and I feel the same way. There's no reason why Ole Miss should have a better football program than South Carolina. And I don't know how much better
I don't either.
Ole Miss is.
I don't either. I go back. I said this 15 years ago, Mike. They had played Sandstorm before, but I call it the birth of Sandstorm night sometimes. It's not the first time they played it at Williams-Brice, but it was a Thursday night game against Mississippi. Ole Miss, I think it was a September game. They were in the top 5. Their quarterback was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and they were like the new darlings of college football. And South Carolina beat them. Eric Norwood led the defense, and they beat them. All right? And Sandstorm made a difference in it. But my point being, it was all this hype. It's like, all right, just go win the football game. And South Carolina did. I'm not predicting that for the coming season or anything like that. I don't know yet. I need a lot more, and we got a few games that'll be played before Ole Miss comes to town. But I think there's reasons to feel like this team will do better than last year. And I think a lot of you do feel that way. But how much better? I don't know. But again, you got LSU, you got Alabama, you got Oklahoma. I get it. You don't have Georgia. You're always going to play somebody good. Thanks for coming in, dude.
Absolutely.
For real.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you. We'll do it again here real soon. Jen, thank you.
Hey, no problem.
Good luck tomorrow morning. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
See y'all.
Oh, thanks, man.